Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 75 of the James Layton Fitness Podcast. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be discussing my top 3 nutrition mistakes and how to avoid them. So, these are things that unfortunately I've followed in the past and I wish I hadn't done. And the reality is, just at that time, I didn't know any better. However, hopefully by providing you with these 3 mistakes, you can save any time and frustration following these principles. So hopefully this is going to save you a lot of time, prevent any frustration, and hopefully get you to your goals faster. Now, the first big mistake I made was following clean eating. Now, you're probably very surprised to hear me say that, and I want to just explain. The biggest issue with clean eating is it doesn't take into account energy balance, it doesn't take into account total calories and macronutrients met by the end of the day. So let me give you a good example. If you eat just quote unquote clean food, and you can't actually define clean food, but let's just assume we're implying non-processed food. If you consume 10,000 calories of quote unquote good food and your maintenance calories are say 2,000, you're going to gain body fat regardless of whether that food is considered clean or non-processed or not. So you cannot just look at foods in isolation without actually considering the whole day's intake and macronutrients, calories, and energy balance. This is such a critical thing, and this is one of the big reasons why I'm so against these clean eating principles, because it ignores the most important factors, which are, remember our hierarchy of importance. Energy balance comes first, and total calories and macronutrients. That needs to be the foundation. Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying that you should just be eating junk food to meet your daily calorie and macronutrient targets. I'm not saying that, but we need to put first things first, and that is energy balance, total calories and macronutrients. Now, I would still suggest consuming 80% of your foods from single ingredient, whole, non-refined foods, and then if you choose 20% of processed foods and things you enjoy, as long as you stay within your daily calorie and macronutrient targets. That's the real key principle here. This isn't like I'm saying just eat complete crap. No, you should still focus on food quality to make sure you're actually meeting sufficient micronutrients, to make sure you're consuming sufficient fiber, and that is a very good way of doing it. So lots of fruits, vegetables, lean cuts of meats, etc., to help to meet those calorie and macronutrient targets. So focus on good nutritious foods for the most part, but at the same time make sure we're still focusing on total calories and macronutrients met by the end of the day. That's such a big mistake I made previously, just focus on food quality but not really looking at total calories and macronutrients and energy balance. Second big mistake I've made is just getting obsessed with that post-workout meal, focusing on trying to time it at a specific point after the training session, in addition to focusing on high glycemic carbohydrates. Again, some big mistakes I've made. So just keep in mind, we need to put first things first. We need to make sure we're still meeting total calorie and macronutrient targets by the end of the day. That still needs to be our first priority. I would still suggest consuming a post-workout meal 1 to 3 hours post-workout, but it doesn't need to be within 10 seconds of your training. Let's just look at the bigger picture. If you're consuming a pre-workout meal 1 to 2 hours prior to the training bout containing at least protein, there's still going to be nutrients being absorbed during the session and also for several hours post-workout as well. So this puts into context that need for that immediate post-workout meal. Now, with regards to carbohydrates, unless you're training twice per day within an 8-hour period, glycogen resynthesis will take care of itself, with the caveat you consume sufficient carbohydrates if your next training session is the following day. So this puts into context people that claim you need to have high glycemic carbohydrates post-workout. Well, it depends if your next training session is the next day or within 8 hours. Additionally, we need to appreciate that protein is also insulinogenic as well. So again, this puts the need for high glycemic carbohydrates into question when protein is also insulinogenic as well. So in short, I would suggest consuming at least protein containing meal within 1 to 3 hours post training, and let your personal preference dictate where you consume carbohydrates throughout the day. With regards to fat intake, again, let your personal preference dictate where you consume a fat intake, because even though fat intake within the meal will slow gastric emptying, this is only a concern if you're training twice per day. Again, if you're training once per day, like most people who are listening to this podcast, it doesn't matter. Glycogen resynthesis will take care of itself at the 24-hour mark, with a caveat you consume sufficient carbohydrates throughout the day. So please just keep that in mind and try not to stress too much about timing of that post-workout meal, and also whether you consume high glycemic carbohydrates or not. Now, if you have a personal preference for high glycemic carbohydrates, so some sugary carbohydrates, this is absolutely fine. Just make sure you factor into your daily macronutrient and calorie targets, but just realize it's not necessary within the context of someone training once per day. Now, the final mistake I've made in the past is just getting obsessed with meal frequency. You need to appreciate that meal frequency doesn't influence your metabolic rate. There's no need to have meals every 2 to 3 hours. Simply let your personal preference dictate a meal frequency that suits you, suits your lifestyle, and you, with the caveat, you still meet those daily calorie and macronutrient targets. Remember, that is the most important factor when influencing body composition. Now, with that being said, it's important to note within a muscle building phase, I wouldn't suggest going any lower than 3 meals per day, because there is a small amount of research that suggests that a too lower meal frequency can impede muscle protein synthesis, and this may potentially affect muscle gains. Therefore, minimum 3 meals per day within a muscle building phase. Within a fat loss phase, just let your personal preference dictate your meal frequency. Therefore, you could use a intermittent fasting protocol if you would like. And this is such a big issue, this meal frequency one, because I guarantee this is the one that will take over life. It has done with me personally in the past, just trying to eat every 2 to 3 hours. It's just crazy. Everyone has busy lifestyles. It's just not very easy to do. So having a meal frequency that actually suits your lifestyle, suits your preferences, is a real lifesaver, because it takes a lot of pressure and stress away from thinking, oh my god, I need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you can look at some of these, maybe you're doing some of them themselves, and realize, okay, that wasn't as important as I first thought, and hopefully make things less stressful and help you to achieve your goals faster. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton Fitness.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top of the page called free ebook, and you can download that immediately. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care.